So, most of us are familiar with Reggie. He is Associate Professor of Black Theology at St. Louis University. He is the author of Bonhoeffer's Black Jesus, Harlem Renaissance Theology, and an Ethic of Resistance, which was selected as a Choice Outstanding Title in Theology in 2014 and then redone in 2021. The book examines the exposure of Black church in the midst of the Harlem Renaissance on Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was killed by the Nazis in 1945. His research and interests are Black arts, Black studies, Black theology, Black church studies, and Christian ethics. He is a board member of the English language section of the International Dietrich Bonhoeffer Society, former board member of the Society for the Study of Black Religion, and the Society for Christian Ethics. Williams and his wife Stacy are the parents of a son, Darian, and a daughter, Simone. And he just over a week ago got back from Palestine. And I am just really glad that I checked so that we could be just, we could be lifted up and pulled down at the same time. Um, so Reggie, we love you. We appreciate you. And take it away. Yeah.
Thank you, dear brother pastor. It is a real privilege to be here with you all again, and specifically at this time here to be able to share about this experience. I don't have a sermon prepared, nothing like that. This today is simply sharing about the trip that I just took 1 week ago today. In fact, I got back exactly today last week. Um, And if you would allow me to share my screen, I've got just some slides I want to walk through.
Should
Um,
work now.
there we go. Okay, now. All right, now let me make sure I have that one all queued up. I thought I did. I don't see it on this. Let's see here. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right, going back here. And now, huh. It's why isn't it showing me my sorry, bear with me for just a moment here.
Of
Uh,
course.
this is acting strangely. Um, so I'm going to go highlight that, come back here. There we go. Okay, and we will go from, there we go. Now, um, to begin with, the reason for this trip was because of a community relationship that me and a few of the professors had with Palestinian Christians dating back about 3, 4 years. So we would meet online regularly. The goal was to help our Palestinian friends think through theology as influenced or mentored by Black theology here in the United States. Our Palestinian friends um, know experiences that are very much they're really like ours, a lot like ours in the States. In fact, as one of them was telling us one day when he was just naming his life story, being the first and the only Palestinian family in West Jerusalem, which is Jewish neighborhood, how the neighbors banded together to protests their presence in that neighborhood. And he and his siblings, he's got three siblings. This friend of mine, four boys all together in this family, were attending a Jewish school and walking to and from home to and from school. There's a neighbor who would leave his dogs out front because the stereotype is that Palestinians are afraid of dogs, cannot swim, and are always angry. And the similarities were just uncanny. Um, there were, as we were talking about our experiences in the States and life in Palestine, it was apparent that the tools that they have to think theological are derived from more centrist and evangelical even sources, these writing sources. So they wanted some help to think about the meaning of their faith in light of what we had to say here in the States as Black theologians. Um, that is the origin of the conversation. And then as time progressed over the years, several events were happening, most notably um, the what's happening in Gaza. We just dropped conversation for a while. A number of them lost family in what's happening in Gaza. And we picked that up again recently and made a way. They helped to make a way for us to see them in person, and which was hugely important to go and see them and to hug them and to sit with them. And that's what this trip was. We went to see our dear friends, and to gain some further insight on what they're experiencing there. Now we were in the West Bank, not in Gaza, in the West Bank. Um, and they took us around. There was not much argument, not much need to convince us of a Palestinian perspective. They simply showed us. I should mention that this is my third trip to that region. I had been there 2 summers in a row with a group that was sponsored by the AJC, the American Jewish Committee. They had a Christian leadership initiative and a Muslim leadership initiative that they would bring to a rabbinic school in West Jerusalem. We were learning about Judaism from Judaism scholars, and we were getting their take on the land. Um, Oftentimes they would have conversation between Palestinian and Jewish person. So we were hearing both sides for 2 years straight. I heard from both Palestinians and Jews about what is contested stories of the land. Um, uh, Not nearly as important as this most recent trip. It doesn't even come close to what I just experienced. The filters that were in place for understanding what's happening in that space were very thick for those 2 years when you paint the narrative as competing stories on the land, competing stories on the land, contested claims of the land, I should say, and how complex that region of the world is. Um, on one hand, one might say it is very complex. Three different religions on that same spot of land, many different countries who take that land very seriously. Um, there is some complexity there in the value of the land to these various people and the need for all of them to live in what is really a diverse experience in one space with many different people. On the other hand, it is not complex at all. What is going on there? I'll leave and I will come back to that. What is happening there is not a complexity. That claim removes the possibility of standing for justice against clear injustice. when you make that claim that it is just really complicated. It's not that complicated on one hand. So, before you is a map of Palestine in 1946 when it was under the it was a British mandate. They owned the deed to the land, having gotten from the Ottoman Empire. And then in 1947, when the United Nations divided that land into Palestinian and Jewish territory in the wake of World War II. As you might imagine, there are people who are living there. The United Nations divides their land without their voice in the conversation. They do this incidentally after they also, roughly about the same time that they're coming up with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Um, it's a, this is, bear with me, I'm going to just let out a little bit from chapter one of a book that I'm currently writing. And the Universal Declaration of Human Rights stands in a genre of writing about declarations that includes the Declaration of Independence and the French Declaration of Man. Both of those declarations, when they're written, include self-determination as a core component of it. Self-determination. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights does not include self-determination because the people who are signing this own colonies. Um, and if they included self-determination, they would put themselves morally out of bounds because they don't give self-determination to their colonial subjects. Much the same way, this land is a settler colony. And the Palestinians there they're under subjection to the United Nations and these Western countries. So they just divide their land up for the sake of human rights. For the sake of human rights, right? They divide their land up. And of course they don't like this living there. So they go to war. They go to war. And in 1948, they lose the war. That is Israeli Independence Day. For the Jews in the land, it's Israeli independence, but for the Palestinians, it's Nakba, catastrophe. And this is the division of the land in 1940, what will become in 1948. But in 19, but shortly after that, I'm sorry, in 1949, 1967, after this war, actually, after that war, you see this map here. It's shrunk quite a bit. Um, until today. I should add that in 1967, there's a Six-Day War. Arabs come back in the land to take it back for the Arabic speaking population that's there, but they lose, and Israel takes it. This is what I'm telling you actually has come from the rabbinic school, but it's when I was there the first two times. These are the Jews who are telling the story, who are telling us the story, but it's the same that you will hear. This part is just the history. It's the same that you'd hear from my Palestinian friends. They say, "Well, we gave you a territory. We divided it up, but you said no, so we can pretty much do whatever we want with it now." That's the sentiment there. So they shrunk the land quite a bit. And then in the 1980s and in 2000s, there were two different uprisings. They call them a first intifada and a second intifada. And after the second intifada, um, in the 21st century, Israel came to occupy large sections of the West Bank. And they not only have they occupied it, they continued to build settlements in there, dividing up this territory, making it much, 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 much smaller. In between the green spaces, which are Palestinian, and this is supposed to be under Palestinian authority, Palestinian governance, in between them are Jewish settlements, checkpoints, walls, and so forth. So that's just a bit of what's going on. Now, what you see happening in the territory is also a, a position of the country on the lives that are there. It's disappearing. Our our stay in the West Bank began in Jordan. We flew into Jordan. There's a picture of our hotel. Flew into Jordan. We started there. We grouped as a group of seven scholars and a community organizer. We grouped there, and then we drove through Jordan to Jerusalem. I gave you this picture here because on the way to Jordan, there are some very important biblical sites. This is the site where Moses was traditionally held, where Moses walked up onto the hillside, looked into the promised land, but was told he could not go. Is Mount Nebo in Jordan. And this little sacred site here is traditionally this place, the place where he looked over and saw this, and over here too. You can't see it because we're on the mountain. If you get up there, you'll be able to see over to this part here. This is it. And this right here is where traditionally the Israelis were encamped. And Moses walked up this hill and looked over into the promised land and died. Our first day there. By the way, if you have any questions at any point in time, don't hesitate to stop me and ask. I'm going to move through these. But if you want to stop me and ask a question, please do so. The first day there, we went to the Al-Aqsa compound, which is up on the area that is the Jews call the Temple Mount. The Muslims call it the Noble Sanctuary. It's the home of the Dome on the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque itself. It was a real privilege to go there and be ushered into both of these holy sites for Muslims. We were there with an organization called Sabil. And Sabil it's a Palestinian organization that was in part started by a theologian named Naim Atik, a Palestinian theologian. So the friends are pretty deep in Sabil in several countries as well. But because we were hosted by Sabil, they ushered us into the mosques, allowed us to see inside the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa. Beautiful places. But what I wanted to show you here initially here, as we started our engagement with Palestinian life in the Al-Aqsa Mosque, what you're seeing here are windows. This is what a window looks like that's not broken. When you see my cursor, okay, a
Yes.
window that is not broken here. These windows have been broken in. They've been broken in by Israeli Defense Forces. Now, this a one standard theme that we learned while there is that Palestinians do not have a right to build anything or to repair anything. They must get permission to do that. If the government learns that they built something or repaired, they will wreck it again. Commonplace. So in the Al-Aqsa, up on the compound, they have an Israeli police outpost now that's been recently placed there. Recently, since my last trip there in 2017, they put police there. These windows have been knocked out by Israeli defense for gunmen. While they're in the mosque praying, gunmen, they've had some uprisings up there. Gunmen come, they can take these posts and shoot worshipers, which they've done, which is why these are still open and broken. This was my first encounter with the violence that we came to know while we were there. Um, in the first two trips while I was there, I was under the impression that the claims of violence in that land were overstated. That was my impression from being with the Christian Leadership Initiative, that the violence was overstated. It felt very safe while I was there with the Christian Leadership Initiative. Um, that was drastically changed on this trip. This was the first encounter with it. The people come in there and they pray in extreme bravery. Um, I feel like I'm missing something with regard to that. The I showed you mosques, those two mosques, but it's important also to recognize that there are, just like our friends who invited us there, there are a lot of Palestinian Christians. There, quite a number of Palestinian Christians live in that land. When the land was separated in 1947 to become Israel in 1948, there were a lot of Palestinians and Palestinian Christians, and specifically the Palestinian Christians who whose faith I mean, their land, their presence in that land, many of them would date back to the first century, to the founding of Christianity, as they would say. They're Palestinian Jews there as well. But what was fascinating to know is that when 1948 happened, forgive me, I'm backing up a little bit. When 1948 happened, they're hearing a story of Jewish taking the land that is the Joshua narrative, moving into that land as a mandate by God that Joshua is taking the land for the Israelites and Jewish people, which has the subsequent story inside of it of the Palestinians as Canaanites, which which maps onto the claim that God is okay with your expulsion and death. Palestinians. God has mandated that. They use that narrative, they use these biblical stories to validate these political efforts here that have financial and governmental backing from different countries. That's also in the background of why they wanted to talk with us to get a sense of how one can hold on to this faith in spite of violent use of those narratives. So that's there. What you're looking at now is a liquidated Palestinian village. In early in the 1940s and prior to that, actually, this Palestinian village welcomed Jewish migrants. Uh, um, and in 1948, Jews remembered that. This this land has a really significant water source in it as well. So this is why the village is there, and lots of farming is taking place here, or was taking place. But in 1948, when the land was handed over to the Israeli government, the village was liquidated, its inhabitants removed, but um, Jewish people in the land remembered that those Palestinians there helped to um, house them and to take care of them. So they let the buildings stay, not the people. The buildings remain there, but this is now a site where Jews come and use the rather large pool as a sacred bathing site. Um, And in the background here, this is something also I will return to a little bit later in the slides. You'll see a set of trees here. And these here are Jewish settlements. This is in the West Bank, by the way. This is in the Israeli occupied West Bank. It's been occupied since the Second Intifada. Um, this is the Israeli occupied West Bank, and they built these different settlements here. Now, the people who occupy these settlements, of course, are not from this area, not from this land, and they want the land to resemble the places that they move from, places in Europe, in the United States. Uh, um, so what they do is they terraform, they reshape the landscape so that it's got some familiarity to it, which means uprooting the trees and planting different trees, planting different plants. What you see here is pine trees, trees from different regions on in the world that are not native to the land. What you would see here is olive trees. And many of these olive trees that they take out are very old. We'll come back to that. Um, then we went. I'm going to move ahead through a few different stories. I want you to know several important ones. We went to a home where settlers are putting a great deal of pressure on this man and his family. He's got, I believe, he had three boys. One of them is this young child here. The boys are young. They're very young. I would say that they're not much older than 12. The eldest isn't older than 12. He has a family home dating back many, 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 many years there. He got a demolition notice, but they decided to stay. I wasn't clear why they didn't just demolish his house anyway. That was something that was unclear for me because they often do that. But they didn't just demolish this man's house. They've encamped him in all around him, and they've turned his house into a prison. I have a picture that I wanted to show to someone else about this entryway here. This is the entryway. This is the gate that the Israeli military placed there. You can see it there. You have to walk through that gate to his house, which is here my colleague Melinda Berry is standing at his house that he's still maintaining, but they're walled in a very small space for these boys. The Israeli military is the only one that has had a key to this gate for a long time. Now he's got some access to it because his mother is living there, and she is elderly and has had a couple of moments where she needed to get into an ambulance. So they allowed him to open the gate. But for months prior to that, many months prior to that, the Israeli military did not open that gate. He had to have the Red Cross dropping food into that space here in order to feed his family. Um, and I don't have pictures here of the settlers around his house. Very violent. Settlers are violent people. Many very ideologues. But they're very violent. And what you're seeing here along these sides here, this grass type thing that's placed here, is his effort to shield his children from much of the explicit and violent things that the settlers will do to offend him and his family to try and get them to move. So they're in a prison. They've made a prison of their home. But they another story from that visit, when we went in and sat down with them, the boys brought us cold water and Arabic coffee, which is a staple of hospitality, Arabic coffee. And he brought us this cold water, and the boys were saying thank you very much when we took the cup. One of my colleagues on the trip said he wanted to help him with maybe his misunderstanding of English. He says, we say thank you. We were the ones who say thank you, and you can say you're welcome. And then he took the cup, and the boy said very much. It was cute. And then our host from Sabia was letting us know that the child is thanking you for receiving his hospitality. And when we were debriefing that night, a couple of us were floored by the dignity and the intent, the strength of that, their courage and pride in sharing hospitality with us, even in the midst of their home as prison. This part, this part of the fence has sensors on it. If you touch it, the military comes, and they threatened to take his kids because a soccer ball hit it. And the threat is not empty. I'm jumping ahead to another story. Um, this one is a bit more difficult to share. The stories that we were encountering were getting worse and worse and worse. We went to, I don't have any pictures of this home or this visit. I'm jumping ahead of we did several of the visits, but I want you to know this one here. We visited the home of a man named Zahir. I hadn't watched the video that was sent out ahead of time, so I didn't know what we were going to. This is a family from Florida. They have a home, and it's a Christian community of Palestinians. 70% of them are dual citizens between the United States and the West Bank. And this family is one of them. They that's their home area. I mean, Zahir, the grown man, the dad, his parents are from that region, but he lives in Florida and has a house there where they would come and visit from time to time. They come to visit in the summers because Zahir wanted his sons, he had three children, a daughter and I believe two sons, to know the region, to know their family in that region. And in this visit, they'd been there for 3 weeks into what would be a summer visit. When the Israeli Defense Forces came knocking on the door at 3 a.m., asking him who's in the house, and he named all of them that are in the house, and they said, can we see your son? Now the boy is asleep. Three armed military figures walk into his room with bright lights, wake him up, terrified him, brought him out of the house as they were questioning him, blindfolded him, and took him away in handcuffs. And by the time we met with Dad, he hadn't seen his son in 6 months. 6 months. They have been working very hard to try and get a sense of how their son is doing, is he's alive or dead, to try and get international attention on Muhammad here. He's had his 16th birthday while he was in prison, lost at least 25 pounds, was sick with scabies, they know it, and accused of throwing rocks. This is the reason for his imprisonment, and he remains in prison, throwing rocks. So the threat of taking the children is not an empty threat. We are doing our best to put some publicity behind this boy's situation here. He's kidnapped from his parents. Just a couple of days ago, several children in Gaza out looking for food from the food drops disappeared. Several of them. Here are a few of their faces. This threat and treatment to of the children is very serious there. Not only are these children disappearing um, into Israeli prisons and death, but they're being tortured with starvation. This is common knowledge. When we were so very upset about Muhammad's situation, our host let us know that they unfortunately cannot give much attention. The Palestinians can't give a whole lot of attention to the one case because of the many, 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 many numbers of cases there are like this. And of course, because of what's happening in Gaza. So this man, this dad from Florida, who's staying there with his family, they were only going to be there for a couple months, who's staying there with his family in hopes of bringing their son back to the United States, doesn't have nearly the help that he would like to have to get his son back out of that prison. Megiddo Prison is the name of it, where several other boys in that same situation with him have died already. And while he was there in prison, his 20-year-old cousin was beaten to death by settlers near their home, near Muhammad's family home. Um, it's a tragic situation, very, 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 very awful situation. And then we went to a village, um, another village. This is a village that has Christian peacemaker teams in it. The man that you're looking at here was a consultant on an Oscar-winning movie called No Other Land. He's a consultant, and I guess he's also good with a camera. He was in his village where there are peacemaker teams, and there were Israeli settlers around it. They've already built settlements near it. There's a really very extreme settlement near there too. But they're building as we were there. We were watching them, the settlers, at work building another settlement and a roadway to connect settlements that would right through this Palestinian village in the West Bank. They brought on one fateful day, the tractor was there and it started moving through the village, uprooting pipes, sewage pipes, bulldozing, taking down homes. The Palestinians present, including the Christian peacemakers, stood in front of the bulldozer, peacefully protesting. They stood in front of it. The bulldozer crane part was brought down on the shoulder of one of them, one of the Palestinians, and he's got a very injured shoulder today. He was walking around with his arm in a sling when we met him. And then some of the young people came from the village, from from Palestinians, and they started throwing rocks at the bulldozer. They started throwing rocks at it. Um, a violent settler known to the Biden administration, on a list with the Biden administration, came out from the neighboring village, actually from the work site. He comes from the work site and he stands in the pathway of the bulldozer and he's with his gun. Um, and the peacemakers and the Palestinians are still standing there, and they're yelling. They're trying to get this guy, the bulldozer, to stop because he's tearing up homes. The settler with the gun aimed his gun. I actually uh, I watched the video, and I don't recommend you watch it. Um, that that this man here, Odeh, is holding the camera, standing next to one of his children, just filming from inside the village. The settler aims the gun at him. No question. I saw the video, the footage. It's Odeh is filming his death. Aims the gun at him because he's got this camera and shot him to death. Now you may have heard about this because this was in the news. That this Palestinian man who was on this film, No Other Land, was murdered by a settler. And the government refused to release his body. They held on to it for more than 14 days. What they did after this killing, and this is the spot where he was killed, they placed rocks around the spot where his body was, and they did not clean up the blood. So as we're standing there, there's a thick odor of blood right here in the space where we're standing. What they did, what the military did instead, or the police, local police did instead, was they questioned him for a few hours, released him 5 hours after he murdered this man. And then they brought him back to this village and said, show us the people who attacked you. This man here was one of the men, very peace-loving Palestinian man, who was arrested, one of 10 who were arrested and held in prison for 10 days before a judge, a judge released them. I should mention that in out here in these settlement areas, the soldiers, IDF, legally cannot stop a settler from doing anything. They legally cannot hinder them, cannot stop them. They don't have the authority to do that. But they are also legally mandated to protect settlers. It it works the way it functionally works as settler um, security forces. The Israeli Defense Forces are the security forces for violent settlers. The people who have the authority to stop settlers are the police who do not patrol these areas where Palestinians are. They just do not patrol those areas. So it serves a function of empowering settlers to criminality and violence. I'm moving through this fairly fast. I'll have time for a Q&A here shortly. We also visited a place where it's run by Palestinians, brilliant Palestinian ecologists who are keeping track of the impact on the land of the occupation and the settlements. Um, they are clear that in the practice of creating settlements, they um, interfere with the ecology in the land. I've already mentioned that they uproot olive trees, they plant trees that are not native to the land, they seize water sources, they dam up water sources, they build walls. The impact of that treatment in that land is devastating. Wildlife dying, some species have gone extinct. Wildlife dying, the land being altered significantly. Um, some birds migrating differently, very, very differently than they once did. The practices of colonizing the water, that's the best way that I would use to describe it, but taking control of the water and partitioning it out to Palestinians only, a week at a time, while in the settlements they have unfettered access to water. Um, they also, when they create these settlements, the settlements are not connected. So the practices of emptying their sewage from the settlements happens just in the land area, in the land itself, which is also a terrible impact on the geography. One might not have recognized that the occupation and the settlement is devastating for the geography itself. So, um, sorry about that. I have many more stories, but I don't want to keep you a lot longer. So I will stop there and offer some Q&A. The There is still, ironically, something that was shocking to me is hope in that land. Hope there amongst some of the Palestinians, while the language of hope is torture for a majority of them, one might still find hope that there will be a time, a moment in which they are given a two-state solution, when they will have authority over their own land. and their experience of that will no longer be apartheid. So it's the first time I mentioned that word, but in many times when Israel, the language apartheid is used in reference to Israel, it sounds like name calling. Um, but then there is just a simple description of the way that politics is done there. There is no question that this is a violent apartheid state. In our lifetime, notions of apartheid, segregation, even genocide reside in the history books as a thing in the rearview mirror, so that it makes it very challenging to see this very thing happening in front of our eyes right now. Yeah. Diane, you got to turn your mic on. Can't hear you. Your mic is off. You're muted, Diane.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, first of all, for bringing this to us, for bearing witness. Um, I've been asking people, some of you may have seen on PBS this week a program on the famine in Gaza, the children dying, and the children. Anyway, I've been asking, okay, so on that program, it talked about 5 tons of food stopped at the border, not allowed to get through the border. So giving money to buy food is not helpful. We can't stand at the border and let people through. What can we do? I saw Amnesty International, for example, sent out something this week. Would you, when you think of the stories of the people you heard, would you bring those to Amnesty? What would you do? What can we do from this distance?
Our friends on the ground there didn't give us much to do. They didn't say do this, that, or the other to help us, except to share their stories. Um,
Yes.
this is the main thing that they told us to do. I'm in conversation with some Palestinian Christians to help them think through the meaning of their faith as they're serving communities there. But in terms of relief for Gaza, they're overwhelmed. They are just flat out overwhelmed over there. Um,
Yeah.
one of my
Yeah.
friends is working for the United Nations, and he's been on trucks trying to deliver food aid there.
Mm.
But right now, especially as this government is moving in to take over Gaza, militarily take over Gaza like they did the West Bank, I am
Yes. Yes.
I'm just I'm as clueless as anyone else about what can be done there. The only the here the big picture is this government needs to stop its support. This government, our government, needs to call this nation out on this genocide and
Yes.
on the building of settlements in the West Bank. Because it's clear people in the West Bank are terrified. They're terrified because once it once they are done in Gaza, they're pretty sure they're coming to the West Bank next in the same way.
Yeah.
Yes.
You, jump in right here. Thank you, Reggie. Can I know it's a little unusual, but and of course we have Brigitte and Kenichi who are going to help lead our conversation from this point. But can we just pause for a moment?
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
I'll read the prayer that Marcy put in chat, and then you can proceed as you are led, everybody. Holy Spirit, cover us with your love. Hold us close as our hearts break open for our Palestinian brothers and sisters, and bring comfort and justice for your precious children in Gaza.
I'd like to add on to that prayer. Lord, as we sit here collectively with our hearts broken and a deep feeling of despair, a deep feeling of unknown, Lord, I ask that you would make yourself present in our hearts, present in our government, present in Gaza, present in the West Bank, present in the Israeli government, present in everyone's hearts. This is an overwhelming situation that no one person can fix. And Lord, we rely on you to bring it all together in ways that we don't even know, because we don't know. We need your guidance here, Lord.
If I may add, Lord, I'm mad about this. I feel rage and disgust over all of this. And I know I'm not the only one, Lord. You know, because I talk with you daily throughout the day. I mourn for the mothers and the grandmothers and the fathers and the brothers and the uncles and the aunties and everyone who is mourning and grieving, the babies, the land, everything. I'm mad, Lord. I'm fucking pissed.
Mm-hmm.
This is evil, evil. And it needs to be stated. We need to speak it everywhere, every day, to everyone, whether they like it or not. Lord, people here are getting upset over individuals wearing t-shirts that say Free Palestine, and they have no clue, or they don't even want to have the clue. Lord, help me, help me, help me to be able to be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Lord.
I'll add to that prayer. Go ahead, whoever was.
Okay, I just wanted to add on to the prayer that because the Holy Spirit, because your Spirit is in every one of us, and we are privileged to be able to speak with people who bear true witness to what's going on. We thank you so much for every one of them that has shared stories, shared real life stories because of being there with us, every one of them. And so we just pray somehow that America will just let go of these false narratives. I thank you for everyone that is starting to see, their eyes are starting to be open.
Mm.
Spirit, allow us to see. We cannot hide in this, in our false narratives of the news and so forth, and let us be servants as you told us to be, so that we are actually speaking, whether it's one-on-one or groups or wherever that we are not afraid to share the truth of those who have come and shared and borne witness with us. We're not afraid, we're not ashamed. And there are some who took on the false narratives who are now living in shame. So I pray that you will help them to release that and to come out and share, to bring hope. We just thank you for our brothers and sisters, God. We lift them up to you. We thank you for the remnants of hope that they have. In Jesus' name.
God, we collectively come before you as we participate in some ways with the narrative shared by Reggie. Thank you for the grace and the embodied experience that was shared by him as if we broke bread and partook together as a community. God, we pray that such grace will emanate from us and in various areas. And even as we prayed earlier, that people's conscience will awaken all over, that the power of the masses coming together, humanity coming together, will overthrow every stronghold, every Zionist lobbyists, God, those that are controlling, those few that are controlling with their money will be overthrown. That you will uncover, that you will reveal the power of your grace by the coming together of humanity as a tidal wave that nothing can stop. No government, no politicians, no one can stop. And that this madness, this pure evil will be overthrown. It's cancerous, God, to the global humanity, let alone, God, for so many children, infants, the most vulnerable. Please remember them. Please remember them. Remember every drop of blood that's been shed. Every bullet remember the bodies that took those bullets. Remember the tears, God. Remember, God. And may your justice manifest. Amen.
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 As a starter for thought, this is such an overwhelming topic and has been going on so long. I remember as a child, as a young child, seeing Middle Eastern conflicts and just thinking, I don't think those people can ever solve this. And in my lifetime, I have not seen any progress in solving this. And I've heard impassioned people on both sides giving their story, and they are so invested and so filled with emotion. I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know how it will ever work out. And so I'm just curious if anybody has ever had an experience in a similar way with a similar type of oppression or injustice, where they felt like something seemed to make a difference. I'm fortunate enough to have a mother who lived through World War II, who tells me stories about World War II all the time. And I'm wondering if maybe, other cultures or other conflicts, if there are still stories that people remember that maybe have some type of bearing or have some type of elderly wisdom as to how to proceed.
Well, let me just jump in here. Kenichi and Brigitte, you've had a hand up for quite a while there. So
You mean Judith and
Judith, yes.
Judith?
Yeah, so I just want to respond to you, Brigitte, and it's my truth that this is not a Middle Eastern problem. This is a people problem. This is an Israeli problem. This is a colonizer's problem. This is not unusual in our human history. We have had many genocides, the worst of which was probably Leopold in the Congo. What, 25 million people were massacred over time there. We're currently having genocides in the Sudan. We have currently had this same kind of brutal regime destroying Lebanon, destroying Syria. We, the United States of America, are complicit in wars in Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan,
Ukraine.
the Ukraine. I mean, if you understand the pattern of
Indigenous people here.
colonization, and if you can get it, this is not unusual. This is just the most depraved live stream genocide we've ever seen since possibly the Middle Ages. With starvation and killing of people who are going for food, and with our government having this sham organization that is feeding like a minuscule amount of people. And we kicked out UNRWA, who had 400 stations, to feed people. I mean, it just is sick at a level that I think, the bar has dropped to maggots. I have no sympathy at this point for Israel. I listened yesterday to a proposition by a lot of people who have been in the nonviolent social action movement for, some of them 50 years, Holocaust survivors, that are all convinced that the only way this is going to stop is by a collective military force. That this regime, this psychotic, sick civilization is not going to be stopped through our prayers, and that the UN needs to enforce what they've enforced before, which is a collective UN stopping, of this genocide. It's in the UN Charter. The UN has deteriorated to a colonizer-led Security Council with no backbone whatsoever. And it needs to change. International law needs to mean something. This is not new, what's happening here. I mean, Indigenous people all over this world have been treated this way. And we have an opportunity to do it differently now.
And that's why I was asking if anybody had elder wisdom from other situations, because it is a thing that's gone on for centuries.
you have some more hands.
Julia, sorry.
Hello, sorry for background noise in advance.
We love it.
We
Hello.
do.
I just want to echo the sentiments of the lady that just spoke. Earlier this week, we had a woman named Jillian Michaels. Some of you may have heard of this incident.
Yeah.
Who was allowed onto CNN to talk about slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't appear to me she has any qualifications at all to speak on that subject. But because of who she is and what she looks like, she gets affirmative action, right? because you are a Euro-American. You can talk about anything. Nobody's gonna check you. Turn around, turn around. No one's gonna check you. And she minimized the horror that was the enslavement of Africans. And I'm saying all that to say this to Miss Van der Ray. The problem is, you ask, does anybody have elders? Does anybody have an experience? And you have to not look any further than any Black person you meet in this country. In other words, when you see Black people who are descendants of formerly enslaved Africans, in addition to all the indigenous people, turn around, turn around. So all of the indigenous people that are still, despite, let's go like this, you just turn, that are still walking around, but for the grace, they wouldn't be here. Those are the people that can tell you just a glimpse that the Palestinians are receiving just a taste of what Africans, both on the continent and here in these United States, what indigenous Native Americans have experienced for the past 500 years. The Palestinians are just getting a taste of that. And we have a unique perspective because it's being live streamed, as someone has just said. So the stories are everywhere. If you would take the time to be in community and ask the questions of the people that have the information, that have the knowledge. So I have more to say, but I just want to say we need a Black first strategy. This is not, you really need a Black indigenous people first strategy, and everything else falls in line. Thank you.
How about Matt?
Hi. Yeah, I have two things, but just to respond to Brigitta's point, just sorry about that. Is to remind everybody about our friend Tim and our friend Karen, who are doing work in Arizona to fight against the copper mining company to take over. Shoot, I lost my David. If you can help me out, the name of the
Oak Flats.
Oak Flats. Thank you. And joining with another group that's organizing with it is Poor People's Campaign, and there's organizing across the nation to save this land, this sacred land, the watering, the community that is going to be erased there. So erasure is happening. To use David's words from earlier this week, erasure is happening all around us. And so, yeah, so there's an example right there. And just this week, there was a success that an appeal went through, and the halting of the turnover of land was halted as of Tuesday. So there's going to be other appeals, and Trump said some nasty shit about it. So whatever. But it was halted for the time being, and we take those wins when we can. But there's an example right there.
Yeah.
And so my question, my second part to that was to Reggie. Reggie, I thank you so much for your witness and your retelling of your stories and the impact that it had on you. I'm curious from your ethic position, I guess, maybe your analysis of things. I've heard people say in America, we are not kind of this like Democrats fight with facts, but we're actually at a messaging war, and so there's a better, MAGA had a better message, that kind of thing. And so kind of facts versus message and that kind of thing. And so I'm curious, I heard you tell a little bit in your story that in your previous trips there, you heard stories, you heard the impact of those things, of the peace efforts, and like maybe the rosier side of things, of the hard side of things. And I'm curious if you feel that we are, even in America and even in this situation, if we are in a post-story time, the story matter anymore? And this is a question coming from deep within inside me that I'm wrestling with. Like, what does that mean if we are also? And I guess maybe what would Bonhoeffer say?
You asking what
Reggie?
would that mean
Yeah.
if we are in a post-story time period?
Oh, are we? And if we are, what would Bonhoeffer say?
No, I think we're still in a post. I think we're still in a story narrative, a
The story.
story.
Okay, and what is that story then?
Yeah, this is well, there's a really good book by I forget his name, Daniel. I forget the author's last name, but it's Being Jewish After the Destruction of Gaza is the name of the book.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's a good one.
Very, very good book, and he's engaging the story of the perfect victim, and that we need to tell ourselves different stories about who we are as Jewish. He's talking to Jewish people.
Yes.
That the story of Jewish people as the perfect victim leads to this kind of atrocity where they are always the victims and never Pharaoh.
Yep.
He opens up with the story about Esther, that story, and how the Jewish holidays resemble that. They tried to kill us, we survived, let's eat. But this is not how the story ends. They tried to kill us, we survived, we massacred.
Ooh.
That's Esther.
Just a footnote and an asterisk. Peter Beinart, the author of that book.
Beinart, thank you.
Yeah, he lost a lot by writing that book, including his own wife.
His own wife?
His own wife left him over his stand against the genocide.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow. That stuff is violent. The investment in that perfect victim story.
Yeah.
So violent. Oh my gosh. Well,
does he talk about the healing side of that victim story? Like how to heal that? Like what does collective healing look like in that situation?
Collective healing for Jewish people?
I guess, yeah, or just that collective story. What is the story arc of that story? I guess maybe
it's a challenge to change one story. It's a challenge to convince someone else to change their story.
It is.
You're dealing with some deep-seated commitments to community, family, loyalties, to practices, fears about threats to society. The way that one changes the story that you're living is I don't know. I do not know how to change someone's story. I just tell different stories.
Yeah.
Thank
you for that. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Jacob's hand's been up for quite a while.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My basic took my question, so I'm going to make a statement. First of all, Reggie, thank you so much for being here today. It was really touching to me, and I'm struggling with the facts. As someone you know, I was a self-hating Jew for many years because of this issue, and I'm wrestling with how do I not become a self-hating Jew after hearing what I heard today, but maybe it's okay if I become a self-hating Jew, because we have done an awful lot of damage in the world, and maybe I need to stop being proud of my Jewish identity. And is there a cause? Is there any suggestion for Jews that you got from your trip of how Palestinians want us to show up for Jewish people? I mean, Jewish people show up for Palestinians and so it.
Yeah, I think I don't think that it's necessary to be. I mean, the language of the self-hating Jew. I'm sure people labeled Peter in that way. The author of that book, being Jewish after the destruction of Gaza. I'm sure that that is a label on him, as well as people who stand in opposition to what this current Israeli administration is doing. That you don't have to be all in for what they're doing or self-hating, or that the history of Jewish on that land, if it does not resonate with you, then I mean, in other words, what's being done to Palestinian people needs to be put out of one's mind if you're going to be, a loving Jewish person for Jewish people. One can stand for the language of justice that's in the Bible itself. Just stand for the language of justice that's there. There are Christian, I found in that village where that man was murdered by that settler, Jewish people. They're advocating for those Palestinians.
Yeah, Reggie, you're bringing up the fact that there are Jews who are truly Jewish, and what I'm saying, some of us here, we participate in Jewish Voice for Peace, and there are some people in our community, some people who are Jewish in our community who are leaders in that. Well, these are people who are anti-Zionist, and yet they don't hate themselves for being Jewish. And I think that, I would say this is probably healthy for Jacob to just accept the anti-Zionism without the anti-Semitism,
Right. Right. Amen to that.
Kenichi, you're leading this conversation. You don't have to raise your hand.
I can let Julius go, and then I can round it up. Mine is hopefully it's a quick question. Julius, go ahead.
I don't know. Thank you. I wanted to finish a thought that I was saying earlier. I don't know. He's disappeared. Which is that there's passion on both sides. There's passionate people, and it seems like this is an intractable problem because there's a lot of passion that's been going on for a long time. Again, if we truly grasp the depth of the suffering of enslaved Africans in the United States, that seemingly unsolvable problem becomes easy just by looking at the experience of people that are around us. They're not, you don't have to try too hard to find them. You did it. He says thank you, which is on the eve of the Civil War in this country. Again, not very hard to find information on the Civil War. There was passionate people on both sides. And here's a phrase that tends to get tossed around a lot. I'm sure if you went back in time and you asked somebody, you would have encountered someone that said, "Oh, there's nice folks on both sides." but let me tell you something. Just because there's passion, you did it. You did it. Doesn't mean you can't solve the problem, but you need a catalyst. Because it's a very difficult problem, but you need a catalyst to spark people to action, and you have to see it for what it is. The United States president, whether it had been Joe Biden or the current president, Trump, can stop what is happening with a phone call. It's so simple, but many people cannot believe that is even possible. But let me give you an example. Apartheid South Africa. For decades, the apartheid movement was pushing, protesting, arguing for colleges, corporations, the US government to back away from supporting South Africa. Many countries did. Jimmy Carter came. You had before him Lyndon Baines Johnson, and you had Ronald Reagan. And then who of all people finally says, you know what, we're going to start sanctioning South Africa? George H.W. Bush. And you know what? Once he did that, within a year or so, it collapsed. That's how simple it is. Why? Because the United States of America matters. Why? Because this entity called Israel is just a pawn in a bigger chess game. South Africa was just a pawn in a bigger chess game. Okay? Back to the Civil War. Seemingly this 300-year enslavement problem that seemed unsolvable, insoluble. What did these Euro-Americans do in 1861, both the North and the South? They fought a war. You have to give Gandhi water. They fought a war from the North's perspective to keep slavery bottled up in the South, from the South's perspective to keep slavery, give slavery the option to go west. Neither of them, when it started, wanted to abolish slavery. We know the abolitionists did in the North, but they were a minority. Let's just be clear about that. But once the war started, it kicked off its own dynamics, because warfare tends to kick off its own dynamics. And as these Euro-Americans were battling amongst themselves, the enslaved Africans took agency and liberated themselves. Enough of them went to the Union lines. Some stayed behind. That they offered their services, labor, as soldiers to the Union, thereby giving the Union an edge and solving this seemingly insoluble problem. You did it. You got it. Okay? So what I'm saying is, it's not insoluble. There are multiple pathways to solve this. Simplest way is Trump just picking up the phone, but his white supremacy and American exceptionalism will never let him do that. So we are pushing and we are waiting for that opportunity so that we can force the system's hand. And in so doing, it's going to be a costly fight. Like the Mr. Bynard, who lost a wife over this. You're going to, in the Civil War, brother fought brother. Families were split up. This isn't going to be, it's not going to be easy. And we have troops in Washington, D.C. right now, ostensibly to fight crime. Really, it's to put the fear of death into Black bodies in that city. So the training that's being done in Gaza, it's just a warm-up for what's going to happen in the United States. So that's what I wanted to say. Sorry for the background noise.
Yeah. Hey, family, I'm going to need to be leaving here pretty quickly here. I don't mean to jump off or leave you early. I hope not, but I do have something else I need to get to here quickly.
Okay, Reggie, real quickly.
Okay.
Just being very transparent before you and before everyone. As you know, there's a congressman named Wesley. And Wesley is known to have received lots of money from a Israeli lobbyist, AIPAC. And he was at a town hall and a lot of people jeered him. I mean, jeered him down. And so I looked at it. He's a Black man. And I responded to an X entry and I said, and correct me if I went out of, but I just felt, I said, it's a damn shame. You being a Black man should be standing in solidarity with the Palestinians.
Well, just a little bit more background on Wesley Bell. Wesley Bell is from right here, St. Louis. He took the seat from Cori Bush who is right here. Cori Bush, Wesley he's the district attorney for St. Louis, and he was going to run for Senate before a Jewish lobbyist group asked him to run for Congress and against Cori Bush. Wesley Bell ended up splitting the black vote here in St. Louis because a lot of black people cannot recognize that the biblical narratives around Israel don't refer to this country of Israel. Many black Christians understand supporting Israel to be doing their faithful duty to to scripture. So there's that as well. One of the struggles that we face is disabusing Christians of their loyalty to the nation of Israel over the country of Israel today. That is a serious problem. Brother Julius he ain't mincing words here, but he's making a connection between the invention of the second-class citizen and the practices of genocide in Gaza. That history is a part of the West itself in its understanding of idealized human that the enslaved end up coming into. In fact, the practices of enslavement were part of the concretizing of this narrative of somewhat human versus the fully human for whom community is made for. And this devotion to Israel by Christians like Wesley Bell end up supporting those very historical, most recent practices, though, of second-class citizenship. And it's in their practice of their faith that they do it.
Reggie, I know you got to go. And I just kind of a heads up, in 2 weeks, not next Sunday, but in 2 weeks, my theme is going to be when Black people don't get along. But anyway, that just came to mind as you were talking. But here's the thing: you mentioned a two-state solution, and I've often reflected on the realism of my former neighbor Butch Ware, professor of history at UC Santa Barbara, and also the running mate for Jill Stein. And he said early on in this current upscaling of the Nakba, early 2024, he said, what's going to happen is either Israel has a choice. What's going to happen is that they're going to be South Africa or they're going to be Algeria. And, for those who know the stories, South Africa still has a very diverse population, but the French are gone from Algeria. They considered Algeria southern France, but instead of opening up to a constitution that would be inclusive, they ongoingly rejected inclusion, and so now Algeria is no longer France, right? So I'm saying all of that to say that I don't foresee a two-state solution. I think Israel dangled it and the United States dangled it so that they could keep going on with the Nakba, but they do not want a two-state solution. And so I'm saying they shouldn't have a two-state solution, that there will never be a two-state solution.
There is not a possibility for a two-state solution given what they're doing in the West Bank right now and in Gaza. It's not possible. I mean, just geographically, it's not possible. When you look at how
they tried a two-state solution in our Civil War.
Well,
there's you can't have a two-state solution with enslavement. So that's a non-starter.
When you go back to that map and you see how destroyed the West Bank is in terms of checkpoints and settlements, the only way a two-state solution would happen is if they expel all those settlements, tear them down and expel them, because you cannot have a Palestinian self-governing land with all of those settlements and checkpoints. We went to, when you go through the West Bank, you pass through checkpoints, settlements, gates. There was a yellow gate that any Jewish settler can close if they feel threatened. And that yellow gate locks all of the Palestinians in their little spot that they've got that's left. A red gate is for the military to close it. But guess what? Once you get of a certain age in Israel, you have to serve 2 years in the military. So that makes most Israeli citizens military, right? So they can close the red or the yellow gate and lock all those Palestinians in there. That's in the West Bank.
Yeah.
All of those are in the West Bank. The only way to have an independent two-state solution is to uproot all of that structure that they have put there, and it is myriad.
And
There's
see,
a
you're
lot.
talking geographically, and I'm talking in terms of, I'm talking politically, that there in the near future there will be no Zionism in that part of the world. I'm not saying there won't be Jews, but there won't be Zionism. In the same way, in South Africa, there's just a small portion of Afrikaners, white folks who are holding on to the past. But for the most part, the people have decided constitutionally, politically, that we are one country, we are one people. And I think that that's what's going to happen here, that there will be no Zion anymore.
Yeah. Well, family, I'm sorry to depart from you on that note, but I'm sorry to depart on that as we pray for that region in the future. May the destructive practices of Christian and Jewish Zionism that cause genocide and displacement, may they be at an end at some point in the very
Can
near.
we all say thank you to Reggie for man?
Reggie, thank you so much.
Thank you. Very powerful.
Powerful.
We needed
Blessings on your work. Blessings on
Thank
your
you
Yeah.
and blessings. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Family.
Gracias. Gracias.
Okay.
Dios te bendiga, Reggie.
Bye-bye.
And I would like to thank also everybody else who commented. Thank you so much, because you bring a lot to the table.
True. Yes. Yes. And Judith, for your ongoing commentary.
Yes.
Thank you for being here, all of you. I've missed you terribly.
Oh, thank you as well.
Yeah.
Well, let's have communion.
I just want to say that from the song all the way through to the message, to the comments, there's really nothing to be said, because we have a lot to chew on.
Oh,
We truly have a lot to chew on. Just beautiful. The one thing I just want to say, Marcy, you spoke of being, aware, but also trying to still keep your joy and your peace. And that's the only thing, because this is so hard on all of us. We have to have joy. We have to go places and be a part of conversations that are good. I went and saw a play, a musical play, those things that keep us. Thank you for saying that. We need that. So, with that said, or if you have your bread, take your bread. And for all of those hungry, I don't know the high places that they operate from, but who are just power, lusting for power and land. Oh, in Jesus' name we come against that. So take your bread and your juice. And I want to say, by taking this, our community, and taking this communion, we come together and we're remembering what the Creator gave us. What the Creator gave is for all of us, every single person, for the world. It's for the world. So we have to do this often. I'm so glad our community does this often, because we know that we're not here forever, but that we will do this until we meet our Creator again. So
Amen.
take and eat.